Good evening, everyone. We just want to give it a few more minutes for a couple of our other guests to join us, and then we'll get started. I see Supervisor Stork has joined us, so we will get started shortly. We just want to give it a few more minutes. Good evening, everyone. I just want to let everybody know we're going to wait a couple more minutes for a couple of extra guests to join us, and then we'll get started in a few minutes. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kayla Quintana with the Fairfax County Department of Transportation, and I want to welcome you to this meeting to discuss the Transit Strategic Plan, also known as the TSP. This meeting will provide an overview of the TSP and allows everyone to provide feedback and questions. Before we begin, I'd like to review some guidelines so everyone can participate and get the most out of this session. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded on YouTube and shared on the county website. You are welcome to submit questions using the Q&A function in the WebEx window at any time, and we will do our best to get to all questions while also ensuring that we get to all participants. Please do not use the chat feature to submit your questions. The Q&A function will send your questions to all administrators in the session, and we'll keep questions organized in one place. If you are on the phone, please hold your questions to the end. We will have instructions on how to ask questions at the conclusion of the presentation. Before we get started with the presentation, we have several speakers who have joined us and will be making some brief remarks. Our first speaker is Mount Vernon District Supervisor Dan Stork. Supervisor Stork?
Well, thank you. And I want to just welcome everybody to really one of the most important things that we do, which is to speak with you, work with you, help you understand what are the transportation and really the community issues that we all are facing, and get your input. We're here to listen to you. We're here to help you understand what all the different options and opportunities are, and and the transportation plan is our best way to do that. As you might expect, we have far more transportation initiatives than we can ever support at any one point in time. And there's a long list, and prioritizing that list and getting that list, focused on the right things with the limited amount of money that we have is really one of the most important things you can do to help us get that right. So I want to thank you all for being here tonight. I want to thank you for listening and participating with this process and ensure in the end that you not only share any comments or questions that you may have, but also that you will then follow up and respond to the survey and give us your points of view about how we should prioritize the transportation money that we have. I will be on for a little bit, and then I have another meeting that I have to go to, so I'll be on for 10 or 15 minutes, but I'm looking forward to listening, and if I can finish with my meeting, get back and be part of this one, I'll do that as well. But again, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Stork. The next speaker I would like to welcome is Braddock District Supervisor James Walkinshaw. Supervisor Walkinshaw?
Thank you, Kayla. It's so great to be here. I want to thank FCDOT and all the staff who are working late tonight to pull this meeting off, and especially the residents who are here to participate and share your perspective and let us hear from you. The Transit Strategic Plan, such an important project for us. We know that in Fairfax County, public transportation, public transit is a priority, and buses are a priority. Fairfax Connector is a priority. And, some of the data around the benefits of public transit, we know that for every $1 that is spent on transit, there's $4 in economic returns that come back in terms of economic growth. We know that buses emit 20% less carbon than single occupancy vehicles. And in Fairfax County, thanks in large part to Supervisor Stork's efforts as chair of our environmental committee, we're moving forward on a pilot program for electric buses, which will make them even more environmentally friendly. We know that 71% of public dollars that go into public transit eventually flow to the private sector by delivering their employees to their job sites and delivering customers to their retail shops. We know that home values near transit are 42% higher nationwide, are 42% higher than homes that aren't located near transit. Transit gives us less traffic. It's cheaper, it's safer, it encourages healthy habits. We're going to be talking a little bit later about the trade-off between walking to a bus stop and having shorter headways between buses, and that act of just walking to a bus stop we know is a positive thing from a health perspective for our community. So many benefits, but we want to make sure we get it right in terms of the planning, and that's what we're here to do tonight, and your participation is so important to that. So thank you all for being here. Thanks for participating.
Thanks so much, Supervisor Walkinshaw. Again, we appreciate your being here tonight. I know you both had long meetings today, so thank you again. Finally, before we begin the presentation, I'd like to acknowledge our Deputy Director of Fairfax County Department of Transportation, Greg Steverson. Welcome to you, Greg. All right, so I'd like to introduce Michael Felchow, who is the chief of the Fairfax County Department of Transportation Transit Planning Team, and he will begin tonight's presentation. Michael?
Thank you, Kayla, and thank you, Supervisor Stork and Supervisor Walkinshaw and Greg Stevens. Thank you all, and hopefully everyone out there is having a wonderful day. We have a lot of information to get to, but it's important for us to hear your input. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a presentation. I have some team members here with me today. I have Randy White and Heijun Kang, excuse me. They're here to do part of the presentation and help me answer questions. So let's go into it right now. We have an agenda. It's up on the screen right now. We're going to go into some of the background of why we're doing this study, what the purposes of this transit strategic plan, the vision and goals that we have presently. We want to get your input on those. some of the transit planning activities that we've been doing leading up to this larger plan, and some of the schedules and milestones that we're looking at over the next year. And then we'll have a question and answer session. But it's important that we know what you need from the transit system. So what is the Transit Strategic Plan? It is a 10-year plan. This isn't the first time we've done a transit plan. The last plan was approved by the board in 2016. Back then it was called the Transit Development Plan. We had a prior one, I believe it was in 2009. So this is an iterative process. Every 5 or so years, we do it again. The Department of Rail and Public Transportation requires that larger transit agencies like ourselves go ahead and do a plan like this. So one of the focuses of this plan is to identify the needs of the community and identify what types of services that we need over the next 10 years. Now, I mentioned that we've done some other plans, and some of these are what we call our service review plans. These are 1 to 3 year plans that we've been working with the community over the last 2 years with a lot of public involvement. And these were more along the lines of looking at ways to make the existing routes a little bit more efficient and effective. The difference between those plans and this plan is that this looks at a 10-year horizon and says, what do we need and what do we want the transit system to look like 10 years from today? So it's important to take those smaller plans, those area plans, and include them as part of this larger process and with your input. The final result of this plan will be a priority list of services and investments in capital and infrastructure that we can try to implement over the next 10 years. One of the first things we want to talk about is what's out there today. Well, we're not a small system. We are one of the largest transit systems. We have 95 routes. Two routes we just implemented earlier part of this month. We have over 300 vehicles, and before the pandemic, we had nearly 30,000 passengers a day on our system. And we connect with all the metro rail stations within inside the county. We have express routes that run to DC. We have other express routes that run to the Pentagon. We have local routes. We have feeders. A lot of our feeders are in the western part of the county that go through neighborhoods and then get on I-66 and connect to the metro rail at Vienna. We have circulators. These are smaller routes. They're little loop routes that connect neighborhoods right directly to other routes and other services like the metro rail. And we have 3 bus garages. This is where we store the buses, clean the buses, maintain the buses. One is off of West Ox, and we have another one in Herndon area, and the other one is in the southern part of the county in the Huntington area. So what is included? What are the elements that we have to go, or the pieces of the plan that we have to do in order to get to that end result? One of the first things we have to do is we have to look at where all the growth is happening in the county, where people are moving into, where the major employment centers are, and we have to hear from you. What are your needs? What types of services are we going to need over the next 10 years? Do we need more express routes, more locals, more feeders, or do we need new types of services like limited express stops? We need to understand where the gaps in the services are. We also need not only just geographically gaps, but also day of the week, whether it's rush hour or middle of the day. Do we need more service in the middle of the day? Do we need more service on the weekends or late evenings? And if we need new infrastructure, do we need another garage, or do we need more transfer centers on even bus stops? Should we have better looking bus stops? There's a lot of infrastructure that goes into a bus stop. So these are just some of the things that we're going to be able to identify, talking with you and evaluating our system. We're also going to evaluate the existing system, making sure that if we do have a route out there that's not performing as well, we want to find out why. And we have a lot of that information that came from those service plans that we've been doing. So we're going to use that information into this larger plan. But we're also going to use available funding. How much money and resources do we have today, and do we anticipate over the next 10 years? Because we want to make sure that whatever we put on that list, we can actually come up with a resource to actually implement it. So there are 5 chapters to this document, and you're going to get a chance to see that information. You're going to get a chance to make comments on it. The first chapter is the system overview and strategic vision. And that's exactly what I was just mentioning about the system overview. How many routes do we have? How many riders are on each route? And the strategic vision is where we want to be. Where do we want to take the transit system over the next 10 years? And that is where we also want your input to really verify the direction of the transit system. The system of performance and operational analysis, that's where we're going to take a look at the routes and see where we need to make improvements. And those improvements are going to be in the 3rd chapter, planned improvements and modifications. And then we're going to prioritize those, as I mentioned before, as part of the implementation plan. When will that improvement actually happen? And that implementation plan is going to be really reliant on the financial plan. When do we anticipate what resources and when? And then we match up that list of service modifications with the financial plan. So as I've mentioned, many of the things that are already on the top of this slide right here today, already the vision, the performance, the implementation, and the financial plan. We hope to get everything done and to the board for approval by the end of this year. But on the bottom side of this slide is you, the stakeholders, and the public. This is where we are today, the big red dot, we are here. So this is our first public meeting. We have 2 more this week. And we're going to talk a little bit later about how you're going to give us your input. There's several ways that you can do that, and Adrian is going to go over that. But your input is crucial. And then later this year, we're going to come back with that list, and you're going to help us quantify that list a little bit more, or maybe make some major adjustments to it, so that when we're ready to bring the plan in front of the board, it has the support of the community. Now, we also want to make sure that not everything that you tell us we're going to be able to fit into the plan, because there are limitations to the resources that we have. So there's going to be a funded section and an unfunded section. So if new funding does come around, we have that extra list of services that we would want to be able to put out there. So the strategic vision, the themes, the goals. So what we're going to do is through our survey, we're going to ask you questions about the vision, the themes, and the goals. We have these right now. They're based on the last plan, and we want to see, do we need to make any adjustments? Visions are rather on the large side. They're very comprehensive, global in scale. Goals are a little bit smaller than that, and objectives are ways that we measure whether or not we're achieving moving towards that vision. The validation is what we're asking you to do. Take a look at the vision, take a look at the goals, and based on your preferences, we may need to make adjustments to the vision, the themes, and the goals. The performance indicators are how we track whether the system is working the way we want it to work and whether we're progressing in the direction. This might be ridership or on-time performance. So the vision, I'm going to read it to you. This is to provide equitable, safe, reliable, clean, and effective public transportation service that complements the other elements of the multimodal transportation system in Fairfax County. This comes out of the County Comprehensive Plan. As I said, it is a large vision. You typically don't want a small vision. You want a large vision so that you have a lot of maneuverability within that vision, but it covers all the key elements, things like safety and reliability and clean, and it's part of the overall transportation system. Some of the themes and goals of our plan underneath everything I'm about to talk about is underneath the idea of equity. We want to make sure that whatever we're putting out there in the street is equitable across the community. Choice, quality of service, efficiency, and safety. Safety is paramount. We need to make sure that the buses are safe, they're clean, they're reliable, and that the bus drivers are well trained. That is one of our key goals of any transit system. Efficiency, we want to make sure that whatever we put out there is cost effective. We want to make sure that if we have a route that's maybe not functioning as well and performing as well, maybe we need to make adjustments to that. We have other routes that maybe have overcrowding, significant demand on it. We want to make adjustments there so that people don't feel overcrowded. So it's adjustments of our resources to match the demand. Quality, that's about how we're providing the service, how often that bus comes by, how late that service operates in the day, how often it operates throughout the day, and whether it operates on weekends. Choices are giving people the opportunity to whether they want to travel across the entire county into DC or just a short trip to the grocery store. We want to be able to have everyone take the travel trip that they need to take. Some of the elements that are going into this plan, I mentioned the bus service review plan already, but we've done some more work, some more groundwork, I want to say. We did a market survey about 2 years ago, and we identified what the barriers are to people who are not using transit or used to use transit, and what are those barriers and how can we deal with those barriers. We also got on the buses and did an onboard survey and asked people who are using the service, what do you need the service to do? And what would you like the service to do? And why do you use it? So we got a lot of really good information there. The bus service reviews, as I said, they were small area plans that we went into a lot of more detail about analyzing how these routes were actually functioning. The stakeholder input and the public meetings, that's what we're doing this week. The stakeholder input is coming from human service agencies that we're talking to, major business associations that we're talking to, major employers, getting a feel for what they need and where they're going in the future. And then, of course, the public, that's you out there today. What do you need out of the transit system? And this will all go into the plan, and we'll create the strategic plan. So I've mentioned several times about these bus service review plans. We broke the county up into 5 pieces. And you can see the map to the left of the screen, those general areas that we broke them up into. Franconia, Reston-Herndon, Tysons, Vienna, Centreville, and Chantilly. That was all those last 3 were part of one major area. And then Huntington to the south. So we started with the Franconia-Springfield, and we also started working with the RESTON-HERNDON plan. We created preferred plans for each one of those. So, excuse me, I'm sorry. So we created preferred plans. We went through a lot of public involvement. Now, each one of these plans is what we call budget neutral, plus or minus 2%, because they are plans about what's going on today and not 10 years from now. So we wanted to make sure they're within the resources that we have. So a lot of what you could see when you see these plans online is we could pretty much do a lot of that today. The RESTON-HERNDON was done in coordination with the new Silver Line that's coming up, hopefully at the end of this, sometime this year, near the end of it. And we should be able to implement that plan when the Silver Line Phase 2 comes online. The Franconia, I said, is a preferred plan already. We have the Centreville-Chantilly-Vienna-Tysons plan, and we've just started working on that. And that has gotten to the point where we've developed the alternatives, brought them out to the public. We're getting a lot of good feedback, and now we're starting to develop the preferred plan. Well, these first 3 plans were short-term plans, waiting for the transit development plan or the transit strategic plan to focus on the larger span out to the 10 years. Huntington was a little bit different because of the bus rapid transit initiative that's going on down along Richmond Highway. We're focusing the effort for Huntington in this planning process, more on the short-term and mid-term process. Now, what is bus rapid transit? That's basically a train on rubber wheels on its own road. The feeder plan, which is part of that effort, is about how the routes in that area along Richmond Highway are going to interconnect with the new infrastructure of the bus rapid transit. So we really need to identify the short-term and mid-term recommendations in this planning effort for the Huntington area. So a little bit more about each one of these bus service plans. Franconia, as I mentioned, is a preferred plan already. We've gained a lot of benefits out of some of this. What we were able to do is we were able to maintain coverage for most of our locations and bus stops, maintain our access to middle schools and high school. We're able to shorten our travel times, make new connections to like George Mason University, while maintaining our access to major jobs. And when we did our testing, we were able to identify that we could reduce our travel time, average travel time, by 17%. The last time we did a public meeting, which was at the end of the planning process when we introduced the preferred plan, was back in October 2020. Now, I have a map up here. If you're familiar with that portion of the community, you'll see that most of the routes are pretty much the same. We didn't really change the route structures, but we did try to look at ways we can improve the frequencies, which is how often a bus comes by, and the span of the operations, or the hours the service operates throughout the day. We were able to look at operating new services, Route 313 that goes from Franconia Metro Rail Station along Old King Mill Road all the way up to George Mason University. And that's this green, blue-looking line right there. And then we had another route that we were able to look at implementing. That's what we call Route 400X, a limited stop service that runs along from Franconia up to Tysons along Backlip and on Gallows Road on top of Route 401, 402. So at those limited stops between all three of those routes, you would end up with 10-minute frequencies. So we looked at ways to use innovative transit services to improve the quality and the delivery of service. So the RESTON-HERNDON plan, as I mentioned, this was in coordination and taking advantage of the opportunity that came along with the new metro rail stations that are being built and almost completed in the RESTON-HERNDON area. So we took a look at the route structures. Right now, all the routes are all going over the wheelie. They don't really need to do that anymore. So we readjusted and the alignments of the routes, roads the routes actually operate on, and the levels of service. And we made new connections from Chantilly to Centreville, up to the community college in Loudoun County, even connections between Sterling and Herndon. And we were able to still maintain our bus stop coverage, connections to middle schools and high schools, and we were able to shorten our travel time. One of the key things that we were able to do was improve frequencies. That's how often the bus comes by on many routes during the rush hour, from 30 minutes to 20 minutes. And then we completed that preferred plan and had our public meeting for this back in July of 2020. This is a map of that route structure that was developed for the preferred plan. And we have Route 901 that comes up Centreville Road. That's a new route that goes all the way down to Chantilly and Centreville. We have new routes that you don't see them on the map. They went off the map all the way up to Loudoun Community College. And we had a lot of routes that really didn't change, but we improved the quality of service on those. Those were the RIBS routes. A lot of the routes went from 40-minute service to 20-minute service, and then were extended, like RIBS 2 is now combined with Route 551 and goes all the way over to the station, which is known as Herndon Monroe, which will become the Herndon Metro Rail Station. So we made a lot of improvements to the system and tried to make routes a little bit more direct. So we still have another one to go here. This is the Centreville-Chantilly-Vienna-Tysons. As I said, this has just started. We just put out the 3 alternatives, got a lot of feedback on these alternatives. We will still need to develop the preferred plan. Each one of these alternatives is trying to solve the same problem, which is how do we use our budget neutral condition to improve the level of service and provide more service to the community. Alternative one looked at it and said, well, let's just make some smaller tweaks or adjustments to the existing system and not make a lot of changes. Alternative two said, well, let's start all over. What if we had more all-day service and more regional connections across the county? Alternative three said, well, let's combine elements of alternative one and two, try to keep those regional connections, but make the system look very similar to what we have today. Our first round of public outreach was in November. We got a lot of public comments, and we're going through those comments right now. We hope to bring a preferred plan out in the next few months. Huntington, as I said, because the bus rapid transit, you see a diagram to the right of that, is basically a rubber wheel train on its own road. Here it's designed in the middle of the road and allows for much faster, more efficient travel time along the roadway. So we have the bus rapid transit project is possibly being implemented in the year 2030. So between now and then, we have to look at short-term and mid-term alternatives to making the improvements until that larger infrastructure improvement happens. And so that's what we're going to be working on as a part of the transit strategic plan. At this point, I'd like to switch over and let Hazen take on from this point. She's going to go over some of the ways that you can participate in giving us your input. Hazen?
Thank you, Michael. Good evening, everyone. I'll talk briefly about what we have learned from our recent outreach efforts and also any additional input we'll need from you. So as Michael mentioned, we have several outreach efforts like the bus service review for each county sub-area and the county-wide onboard survey and marketing studies. We have received over like 7,000 responses from the public. Those are all great inputs. So based on what we heard, here are the top 5 needs we learned from people. People want to travel fast. The buses are available when needed. Bus can take you to places where you need to go, and getting there on time and also taking bus can fit into your lifestyle. So based on what we heard, there are 4 key improvement areas we need to focus on. So we need to provide better bus connections to other travel options like biking, walking, driving, so that people can switch from one travel option to another, like from bus to driving or driving to bus, or like from biking to bus or vice versa. And we need to increase our bus speed and provide more services, which means the bus can operate longer hours of the day and more days of the week, so they are available when people need them. We also need to have more shorter headways, which means the bus can come to your stop more often. So in case you miss one bus, you don't have to wait for very long for the next one to come. To make a bus plan, that will help us over the next 10 years. So we need your input. No matter you are a current rider or a past rider, or even if you have never used our buses before. So we want to hear from you. So we have set up an online survey that you can fill out. So from the survey, you can tell us what your travel pattern will look like in the future and what are the places you travel most and how often do you ride the bus. And if you don't ride the bus, we like to know the reasons for that. Also, in terms of the future improvement opportunities, we want to know what's your priority, what's more important to you and your community on those improvements, and also what kind of service do you like better. So with your inputs, we will like hope to make our services better match to your travel needs and your priorities. So the TSP survey also has some optional demographic questions. through which we'll learn more about our customer riders. The online survey has some preference questions which are asking about what kind of service you prefer. So each question will have like 2 options you can choose from. For instance, suppose you take a bus from home to your job. Do you want to walk for like a few blocks to a major street where the bus can come every 15 minutes? Or do you prefer wait for the bus closer to your home and the bus comes every 30 minutes? So which option will work better for you? So in other words, do you prefer shorter walk or shorter waits? Next, please. So here's another example related to the preference questions. Suppose you take a bus to a shopping center, like you have 2 options. Option A, you get on the bus and then transfer to an express bus, and which in total will only take you 25 minutes to get to the shopping center. Or option B, you get on the bus, ride for 45 minutes to your destination without any transfer. So again, like which option you prefer? And do you prefer the shorter travel time bus services, or you prefer no transfer services? There are a couple more preference questions in the survey. So we hope through your input, we can learn more about your preference so that we can prioritize how we can improve the bus services in the future. And together with your help, we want to make Fairfax Connector a more appealing travel choice for all of us. So how can you participate? You can provide your comments by February 19. Can take the online survey at fairfaxcounty.gov/connector/TSP, or you can email us your comments, fairfaxconnector@fairfaxcounty.gov, or you can call us at 703-339-7200, the TTY number 703-339-1608. Or you can mail your comments to Fairfax County Department of Transportation, Transit Planning, Public Comment, TSP, 4050 Legato Road, Fairfax, VA 22033. So at this point, we are concluding our presentation.
Thank you so much, Haejun and Michael, for an excellent presentation. So now we come to the part of the meeting where we open it up for questions. And as a reminder, I'd like to ask all of you to use the Q&A function to type your question for the moderators to read aloud. Again, please do not use the chat feature or comment or ask questions. And if you're joining us by phone, you need to listen carefully. Please push *3 to raise your hand to ask a question. And when it's your turn, the moderator will call on you and ask your question. And after you're finished, please push *3 to lower your hand. All right, so I noticed all of you were typing in questions and comments as the presentation was going on. That's great. That allows us to get started. The first comment we have from a participant, it says, please keep the 553 Fairfax Connector bus route through Viking Drive at Boxmill Estates in Herndon. This allows my family and I to reach our work in Washington, D.C. Thank you. Michael, did you have any comments or want to elaborate on that in any way?
We have done a lot of work on this, and we can get back to the individual about the actual recommendation, the final recommendation that came out of the RESTON-HERNDON study. And remember that just because the RESTON-HERNDON study came out with a plan and it's going to be implemented, it doesn't mean that that's locked in stone forever into the future. We're going to review the plan, take a look at it after 6 or 8 months and make adjustments to it. So I'd like to get your contact information. If you want to email us directly, we can give you more particular information about what we are planning to do, what's planned for that route. Hejun or Randy, do you have any particulars on that exact route? I know Route 553, we've gotten some comments in the past on that one, and we've made some adjustments on that route. Do you want to address that, or maybe we can get that more detailed information to the individual after the meeting?
This is Hejun. We received a similar request through the Herndon-Reston sub-area study. Yes, the Backing Drive and Fox Mill Road will be part of the 553 in our recommended plan.
I believe, Hejun, you can ride that bus either up to Herndon Metro Rail Station or over to the new Reston Town Center Metro Rail stations, correct?
It is, yeah, running between the restaurant. Yes, you're right, serving the two Metro Rail stations and the north end to Herndon High School.
Thank you.
Thank you both. I'm sorry. Thank you very much for that answer. Our next question is, have you considered that travel patterns will change even when the pandemic is over? Lots of organizations are going to continue to telework.
This is a question I've been practicing answering. This is a tough question. A lot of transit agencies throughout the country and the region are trying to understand the travel patterns as we move hopefully out of the pandemic this year and determine when and if travel patterns will adjust and remain the same. We're going to keep an eye on it. That's why we want to do this plan, and that's why we do this plan every 5 years to up the new information about travel patterns. And that's also why we're doing these small area plans so that we're a little bit more nimble and be able to make adjustments more frequently than just every 5 or 10 years, so that we want to be able to adjust for that. And one of the things we also want to do is, while travel patterns may change, there are needs out there to people who either don't have a car, can't drive a car, don't want to drive a car, they need transit regardless of the travel patterns. And we want to make sure that they have the opportunity to get to where they need to go when they need to go. So that's why right now our entire transit system has been re-engaged since August and is out there, while other transit systems throughout the region haven't even re-engaged their full system yet. So because we felt it was important to those first line workers and workers who can't telework, who need to get to work, to feed their families and maintain their livelihood, and individuals who need to go to doctors or wherever. So we understand that travel patterns are going to change. We're looking at that right now. We're also looking at 10 years of travel patterns. Where is it going to be in the next 10 years? So we are assessing that. We don't have a solution, but we are assessing it.
Thank you, Michael. I'm now going to combine a couple of comments from the same individual. So if you could just kind of put your listening ears on, it's going to be longer than the typical question. The comment is, it is important to keep in mind that the mass transit system services mostly the low-paid retail workers. That means you need to look at the growth of the population that you serve, not the general population. You need to evaluate the residential growth of the lower income population the system serves, not just the residential growth. And then similarly, you need to evaluate the growth in retail jobs, not just the general employment growth. So would either of you like to address the factors that you considered so far that tie into this particular question?
It's an excellent question. And as a transportation planner and a transit planner, that's where we start. Where are the jobs? What types of jobs? And that's one of the things we've asked people as part of the onboard survey. what's your relative income, so where do you live, where do you work, so we can get a basic understanding of who the customer is. I've been in transit for a long time, and the example that you give is really key to the transit need and demand. So we're always looking at that factor. One of the things that we've done and we're continuing to do is that we identify the transit reliant population throughout our county, and then we identify generally where they're working. And believe it or not, our buses are smart buses. We count every person that gets off and on the bus, so we can actually cross-reference our data, about 8 million data points a year plus, and that allows us to understand who's using the bus, when they're using it, and basically how they're using it. So yes, that's exactly what we're doing and what we'll continue to do as part of this evaluation process, and about part of our evaluation process when we look at sets of routes and individual routes. Hejun or Randy, would you like to add more?
I think you've covered it pretty well, Michael.
Thank you, Randy.
Great. So actually one of our next comments is actually a link to a reddit.com article in the Nova section. And it looks like, I did take a look at it really quickly. It looks like someone posted a photo of the flyer that we sent out to every resident in Fairfax County in the 10 languages, the top 10 languages for the county. And it looks like lots of folks are commenting very positively on that so far. So I hope all of our attendees actually received that flyer. But thank you very much to the participant who posted that link. We were unaware of those comments. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. We appreciate that very much.
Okay, let me add while you're saying that.
Sure, go ahead.
That flyer, which was a really great idea by the Fairfax County Department of Transportation Communications team, to get that flyer out, to drive people to not only this meeting, but also to the online survey. We've gotten over almost 1,700 respondents in the last week or so who've gone online and started completing the survey. So really good information, really good start. Hopefully that continues. And I think it's going to close on February 19th. So we got another month of information. I will tell you, we did similar surveys for all the service plans that we've been developing. Hejun had mentioned the thousands of people that got online. There's usually a place where you can type your comments in. We read every single comment, just to tell you. And one of the things I just wanted to also mention, as part of those individual plans, we tried to read each comment and make adjustments to those plans. And if we couldn't make an adjustment for that plan, we then took all those comments and we're now putting them in this plan. So if you commented on any of those other smaller area service plans and you didn't see your comment come to an actual implementation or part of the final recommendation, know that we read your plan, read your comment, and we're including it as part of this plan, because this one will hopefully have a larger bandwidth of funding over the next 10 years, and maybe we'll be able to implement those larger requests.
Thank you, Michael. Our next question is, in light of WMATA's virtual abandonment of the 17 and 18 and other lines that provided neighborhood service to the Pentagon, is there any chance of the connector reevaluating the proposed routes on Rolling Road and other Springfield-Burke areas?
Excellent question, and that's exactly what we need to do as part of this study. Now, I'd like to say that if we were in a real public meeting, not a virtual public meeting, I would be standing up there and my team members would be having a flip chart and we'd be writing all this down. This is one of those questions that we need to write down on the virtual flip chart, as this is an area or a gap that we need to take a hard look at and find out what the county needs to do to meet the needs of the county residents to get to where they need to work and what they need to do. So yes, we'll be taking a look at those areas that the MATA has basically vacated and seeing what we need to do in the near future and over the course of the next 10 years.
Excellent. Michael, did you want to also talk about the, I believe it's the 15K for July?
Sure.
That would be in that same area would affect this. Do you want to mention that?
Yes, there are several routes that we just went out to a public meeting. We had it, I think it was last Thursday. How the week flies by for us. There's several routes. One of them is the 15K running to, correct me if I'm wrong, and I believe it's the East Falls Church, all the way up to McLean area and then over to the CIA. That route, I believe, has been abandoned at this point in time due to funding issues from WMATA. We are looking at taking over that route. We've done a lot of analysis over the last few months to see whether or not we can take that route over. We're also taking a look at Route 3A that runs through Mason District, 3T that runs out of Tysons down to West Falls Church, 29W that runs along Little River Turnpike onto the interstate over to the Pentagon, and its reverse trip that comes back out, and that's a 29C. So we also already looked at S80 and S81 and S90, which are now part of our system now as of January 4th. We took over those two routes. They're once called the TAGS routes. They're now Route 350, 351. So we're moving forward on taking a look and possibly taking over with the correct funding, availability, and board approval. We'll be taking over those routes that I just mentioned before the tax routes. And hopefully those will be successful for the community so that we don't leave large swaths of our community having to walk a mile for a bus trip.
Excellent. Thank you. I just think since those are those metro routes, I think it was certainly perfect to add on to the response to this question.
Just
Our
something
next
I mentioned, people can go online if they're interested about those routes and those service changes. I believe that the survey for that is open until January 22nd. So please go ahead.
And that link's available at fairfaxconnector.com. Our next question is, can you take the survey more than once? Last time you could only provide input once. If you discover something else that you missed the first time you took the survey, can you complete another survey?
Kayla, do you know that? I'm not sure. Asian, do you
Yeah,
know that?
let me try to answer that. My understanding is that, say, if you take the survey from the same IP address or same device, and once you submit and you cannot retake it. However, if you have another device like the iPhone or the app, like the tablet, and you can take the survey again through there by copy paste the survey link.
They can also, if you remember the question that you want to adjust, you can also email us or write us to tell us if you have additional information. If that doesn't work and you only have one device.
And those ways to communicate with us are actually on your screen right now, and we'll review those at the end of the presentation or at the end of our Q&A session. Our next question is, what is important is, or actually a comment, looks like what is important is the reliability of the service. I don't think either of you would have objection to that, but Michael, did you want to respond to that comment?
Well, let me just say that reliability is extremely important for transit. It's our lifeline, lifeblood. Our entire team, along with operations, is always thinking about reliability. One of the things that we do, just so you understand how often we look at reliability, we call it on-time performance. We look at that literally every single month. What is our on-time performance? We look at it as a system, and we look at it on a route-by-route basis. We look at it in terms of rush hour, off-peak, what we call midday, and late evening, and even weekends. And we have found situations where overall the route looked fine, but there was something interesting, and maybe it was the weekend. We found a route 950, it was just last year, that actually had a problem on Saturdays for on-time performance because there was so many people trying to use it to go shopping. So we're always looking at on-time performance, reliability, taking a look at where our buses are getting slowed down in congestion and making adjustments to that. Right now, there's not a lot of congestion out there due to the pandemic, but once the pandemic is over, the congestion may come back. And so we're doing all our planning, not in terms of this little time period, but in terms of what it was like before and what it could be like later on. So we're not getting a false sense of travel time in our analysis. We're using data from before the pandemic, so we give the bus enough time to get from point A to point B. And as I said, our buses are smart buses, what's called intelligent transportation systems. And the buses not only count people getting off and on, but they also know where they are on planet Earth. And they compare that to the schedule. And the buses get live information on Google Transit and our own bus tracker. So that information is out there, and we're always looking at it. So yes, you're right. Reliability is vital for transit success.
Excellent, thank you. I have another question. When will the timetables be available? It's difficult to determine if routes will work, especially when they involve transfers.
That's an excellent question. For the transit strategic plan, which is a 10-year plan, we typically don't create timetables. That when we get a little closer to implementation and we bring that project, that particular service to a service change, we will then develop a timetable and bring that out to the public. For the preferred service plans that we just did for RESTON-HERNDON and Franconia, we actually developed draft timetables. And so you'll be able to see if you go on the RESTON-HERNDON website, our website, and go to navigate to RESTON-HERNDON, you will see timetables. And those timetables were issued out as part of the preferred plan, and we received a lot of comments on them, and our team went back and made adjustments to making sure that those connections actually happen. In fact, we're still adjusting some timetables to make sure transfers actually work as effectively as possible. But yes, you're correct. You can't make a final decision until you get that timetable. But since this is a long-term plan, we're not going to come out with a timetable. We're pretty much just going to come out with the route, structure, and the level of service. And timetables will come later, because things may change over time.
Thank you, Michael. I've got another comment here. It says, it's great to see that the 937 has not been eliminated. However, the current schedule should be maintained. Weekly service is too limited.
Yes, that is true. It was adjusted. Unfortunately, we don't have the resources at this time. We can take a look at it, see if there are additional resources can become available. But at this time, we have limited resources to make that an all-day service. We are trying to make that as beneficial as we can with the limited resources that we have. And if you need more information on that, we can please email us and we can try to work with you on a one-on-one basis or within the community and try to communicate that route structure and that schedule with you.
Our next question is, what is the URL of the presentation so I can forward it to folks who might be interested in reviewing it? Thanks. So actually, Michael, I'm going to answer that question. That presentation will be posted on the Fairfax, the FCDOT website tomorrow. The URL to follow, you can get your pen ready. It's a fairfaxcounty.gov/connector/TSP. So it's also #1 listed. That will get you to the transit strategic plan page. You can see it as listed as #1, where it says take an online survey. That will be posted. This presentation will be posted there. Also, a recording of this presentation will be posted there. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next question. Or a comment, I should say. It is important that 981-983 continues to connect to Herndon Monroe and continue to Reston Town Center without having to use Metro, which is more expensive. Michael, did you have a comment about that? Or?
Hey, June, maybe you could go into some detail on those routes. I believe there was a mitigation that we came up with for that one.
Yeah, I will try. So for the proposed plan we are working on for the Herndon-Reston area, we do have a proposed new route, which is called 952. That will serve from the Wiley Metro, connect the Reston Town Center Metro, the Herndon Metro, and then all the way to the airport. So it's an all-day service, 7-day service. So that will give people the option other than Metro Rail.
Thank you, Hejun. Our next comment is, thanks for the presentation, very informative. I'm not going to say the person's name because we try to keep this private. They are highlighting frequent local service in Tysons during community hours is important to us. Any plans to use driverless buses? And there's one more to add on to that. What's the status of the express bus lanes that are scheduled for Tysons?
Let me see if I can address the driverless buses. Right now we have a test going on. It's called Rely. It's in the Mosaic area. It's a new technology. We got a grant. We combined our efforts with Dominion Energy. We have a little autonomous electric vehicle that goes from Dunloring south to Mosaic and turns around during the midday time frame. It's a test to see how the technology works. There's been other tests throughout the country. Obviously, it's in the early stages of technology for a transit vehicle. And we'll see how that all works out. This is something that can be used in the future. Maybe what we call first mile, last mile services. So we're experimenting on that. I know that the county would like to look at other tests, and we're talking about that internally to see where we can do another test when this grant runs out. And what was the second half of that question, Kayla?
Let me scroll back up. We said the driverless buses, they indicated that they wanted a local, frequent local service in Tysons during community hours. And then the second part of that question, or the question was, what's the status of the express bus lanes that are scheduled for Tysons?
Okay, so that's outside the Beltway on I-66, I believe, is what you're talking about. The construction is still happening. I not aware of the actual date we can get that to you. I know it's in the next, I think it's 2 years, but don't quote me on that one. But we can get you that information and provide that when that's going to happen. We are looking at types of services that can actually be implemented along that corridor, connecting the western portion of the community to Tysons, and also using those those express lanes to also connect the western portion of the county to Franconia. So therefore, using our bus systems along as many of the express lanes as possible. So, and that's actually part of the Chantilly-Vienna-Tysons service analysis or bus service review plan. So we are looking at that, and we're trying to see how we can take advantage of those express lanes. Randy or Adrian, do you want to add anything at this time?
Well, the express lanes on I-66 are potentially going to be a game changer for Connector. We have, quite a few routes that go into the Vienna Metro station. Generally, most of them are or have in the past, when there was a diamond lane on the inside, were in that lane until they got within about a mile or so of the Lee Street exit, and then had to move all the way over from the far left lane to the far right lane. This can be challenging for a bus driver. With the express lanes, one of the things that will be happening is there will be a bus ramp that will be connected to the new Vaden Drive overpass, right by where the metro tracks end, just west of Vienna Station. And that is probably that's going to save us a few minutes getting in and getting out of Vienna, heading to and from the west.
Thank you, Randy. Our next comment is the other population you need to consider is the population that can't drive because of medical issues. That would include the disabled community, but also people that have conditions such as epilepsy that precludes them from being able to drive.
Excellent comment. And as a longtime transit planner, I planned a lot of on-demand services in other communities. One of the things that we're making sure that we do is make sure that all the sensitive populations have the opportunity to use the transit system. It is your system. It's not my system. So that's what we're here today to listen to what we need to do in order to make the improvements to the transit system. So once again, thank you for that comment, and we're going to be looking at how we can meet the needs of those sensitive populations.
Thank you, Michael. I'm just trying to scroll through all the questions here and make sure we get everybody a chance to respond, or give you a chance to respond to multiple different questions. Okay, our next comment is the RIBS 4 is changed to go along Reston Parkway instead of Town Center Drive. When the 950 is late, it's easy to deboard and catch the RIBS 4 without going all the way to Reston Town Center and missing the bus because 950 is late. I know this is kind of more Reston focused, but did you have a response to that, Michael or Hejun or Randy?
I'm gonna kick that over to Hejun at the moment, and then maybe I'll tag on to that.
Yeah, for RIBS 4, And we keep the same alignment for most part of the route, especially the northern. We only make minor change to the southern part, which is going to serve the new metro rail station at Reston Town Center. So other than that, the alignment, it keeps the same as today. And also, as Michael mentioned, we have for each route, and we have posted the route map online. So yeah, if you have any further clarification question, you can either check the map online or send us email, contact us for further information about this route.
One of the other things, thank you, Hajian. One of the other things that we're doing with 950 is we're putting more service on it. So it runs 15-minute frequencies for a longer period during the day because it is one of the heaviest used routes in the Reston-Herndon area. So hopefully that alleviates the bus's reliability because we went through and we retimed the whole route and tried to get it 15-minute service. So if you miss one bus, there should be another one in 15 minutes. Hopefully that will help in the future.
Thank you, Michael and Hejun.
Yeah, I
I'd like
also want to
sorry.
add on, for the RIPS 4, we also improved the frequency for RIPS 4 from 40 to 20 minutes during the peak time. So that's also another service improvement.
Great, thank you. I'd like to now move over to one of our call-in users. I believe your call-in user number 3, your phone number has a 509 in it. Can you, Brian, can you unmute them and have them ask their question? And thank you for your patience.
Hi, yes. I actually have a few questions. So several years ago, when there was some plans to either cancel or try to fix a route that it used to be 314, but now it's 372 on Albin Road. We were trying to keep it going because I used that to get home from the Metro Springfield Metro, and it stops right by my house. And they were like, "Well, that's low ridership," and I was like, "Yeah, but it doesn't matter. If someone's taking it, then it should be going." And the other issue was too that since I have a disability, that's another thing. And I mean, yes, I could get paratransit, but that's not as reliable because they have a 30-minute window, either 15 minutes or before or after your requested pickup time. And so my question is, and they didn't ask me about this before or let me know years ago when I was at their little panel thing, is if you guys have like a disability panel that you guys consult with community members or even people that can come in and help train new bus drivers on disability awareness stuff. And also, who do you talk to when you have an issue? I mean, I've expressed issues in the past, and someone came out and did a survey of my bus stop and spoke to the person that refused to accommodate me. But I'm sure there are other people that have issues at bus stops that need to be evaluated. So who do you go to when you have like an accommodation issue at a bus stop?
You have a lot of questions there, and I appreciate all of them. Randy, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the history of the route she was talking about, and then we can go forward from there.
I believe she was talking about the 341 and the 372. We did make some changes to the 340 and 341 a few years back. There had been some issues with the previous version of the route, which I want to say, I think it was, I don't recall exactly what the route number was at that time, but it was rather confusing. And this, when it started serving the, I think it was the Fort Belvoir North area, that really made it worse, because the security gates there make it so that we can only go through, into, and out of the facility in one direction. Now, I, however, was not aware that you had an issue with the with the stop.
So, if I may, I just want to add one thing to the call-in user. What I would ask you to do, if you would please, if you would just email us at fairfaxconnector@fairfaxcounty.gov. We actually have a stakeholder group to address issues like the one that you're asking about, and we would certainly like to make sure that you're included in that, and that your comments are included in that as well. So, at some point, either if you can please email us, or at the Fairfax Connector at fairfaxcounty.gov. We'll respond to you directly, okay, if that's all right. And I see you have your hand up again. Do you have another, hopefully, let's just unmute her, Brian, so she can ask another question. Did you have another question?
Yeah, I was wondering if there is like a panel that that riders with disabilities can contribute to, that, you know, when, you know, either we have issues or just, you know,
yes, there is
wanting to assist in drivers training of, like, you know, hey, maybe you should try, you know, training this way, or suggesting they say this or whatever.
Excellent comments and excellent questions. So again, there is a panel for this, and we'd certainly like to include you in that, or at least include your feedback in that. Also, Brian, can you unmute Anna? I think she has a little more information on this that she'd like to share. This is Anna Nissen, our Chief of Marketing Communications for FCDOT.
Hi, everybody. I'm glad everybody's here today to providing us some feedback. Like Kayla mentioned, I work with Kayla and Michael on Fairfax Connector bus service, and I wanted to address some of the questions this caller had. There is a panel. It's called a stakeholder advisory group that we put together for each Fairfax Connector planning effort, and we would love for you to join that group. That group actually meets this week, so if we can get your contact information, Kayla will be reaching out to you. We also work very closely with the Community Services Board to you know, hear any issues that people have in various areas of taking transit. So that is another way. And so I'm sorry, I had to step upstairs and run a little bit. And also, if there's any issues that you experience as a transit user at any time, you can reach out to our customer service directly, and we will take care of whatever issue you have, whether or not it is related to the transit service that you're taking, or whether it's related to a bus stop. And I think on the screen right now, if you're on a computer, you can see the email address as well as the phone number. The phone number is 703-339-7200, and you can reach us this way. So I hope that answered your question a little bit more. And I think the driver training piece, we're going to take that back with us and talk to our operations staff, and we can circle back with you to discuss some more and, you know, talk about what we're doing on that end.
Thank you, Anna. I appreciate you clarifying that. All right. Since our next comment is, since you have taken over some of the abandoned lines of WMATA, have you worked with our local legislators to get some of the funds redirected from WMATA to you so that you can serve the communities that WMATA vacated?
Excellent question. That's something I would like to take that down and bring it up to our leadership. And maybe that's something that we need to include as part of an effort in the planning process. Funding can also be a recommendation in this document of how we can identify funding sources, and that could be one. So we'll take that notation down and see what leadership says and include it in our possibly might be included as a recommendation as part of this plan. Thank you.
Great. Another question we have is the express routes to or comments, and then also a question. The express routes to DC have been a game changer for commuters. Are there any plans to change those routes?
You're talking about Route 699, 698, and 697, not at this time. Even in the plant, well, there is one change, and it's actually to extend Route 698, which starts at Vienna, to extend that out to Stringfellow parking lot. And that's part of one of the, a couple of the alternatives in the Centreville-Vienna-Tysons service plan. It's not to say it's going to happen. There has to be additional funding and buses have to be purchased for that. But there could be some resources, and we're looking at possibly doing that in the future, the near future, hopefully. But yes, that is the only one. 699, the only thing we did with that one recently is that now has a reverse trip to it. So you can get on the bus in DC and come out to the county if you work the opposite direction than everybody else going into DC. And then of course, 697 is brand new, just started this past summer. So no change on that route yet. And we're still, because it started in a pandemic, it's having a lot longer curve to build its clientele up with. Route 699 had a much shorter climb to success than 4697. But hopefully once the ridership comes back, we'll see growth in all of those. But right now, I'll lean it over to my two team members. I don't believe there is anything that we're, other than the 698, which is an expansion. I think we're also possibly looking at improving frequencies, but no adjustments in terms of taking it away or reduction of services, correct, Asian?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right, thanks, Michael. And Hejun. At this point, I'm going to go back up to the questions. Typically, what we try to do is we try to spread things out so that everyone gets a chance to ask a question or make a comment. So there are a few folks who have multiple comments or multiple questions. So at this point, I'm going to scroll back up here and try to identify those, and we'll start working our way through those because we have a little while longer. Without the 981, 983 covering Herndon and Row, and RIBS 2 not covering the section between Herndon and Row and Sunset Hills by Target, there's a gap. Michael, did you have a comment or want to respond to that or want to follow up later?
Well, actually, maybe Hejun might have some additional information on that, but yes, we'll take that back definitely and take a look and see where that gap is and why that gap is. Hejun, do you have a little bit more on that one?
Yeah, we need to take a closer look at those.
Take a closer look at that one. Thank you.
Yeah, if you, based on your comment, and also if you want to provide more details, and yeah, please send us email or call us, and we'll get back to you.
So I just want to remind everyone that we will have a record of all the questions and the responses. So definitely, so if for some reason we can't get to your question, although I think we're going to be able to get through all of them, we will definitely follow up with you if for some reason your question doesn't get answered. So let's proceed. Michael, a lot of the 605 riders use the route to get to Fair Lake Shopping Center. It seems unrealistic to expect them to change at the hospital to 615. Something else should be considered. Any comments, Hejun or Michael?
take another look at that route structure and see what we can do. There is some possibility that there's some what we call interlining of the route. That's where one bus turns into another bus route. Just changes the name on it. The reason why we made that adjustment was because we got a lot of comments about people who wanted to get right down to Fair Lakes in the Fair Oaks Mall, and they didn't want to go to Fair Lakes Parkway. So we made that adjustment based on the comments that we got at the time. So this is a different comment. So we need to take a look at that. And I know that I will go back to our schedulers, and maybe there's some opportunities to make it so that you don't have to transfer and make some adjustments to the schedule. So we'll take that under advisement. We'll take that a harder look at that scheduling. So, thank you very much.
The next comment from the same individual is, when you say 901 is a new route, and new is in quotes, isn't this a misnomer? It seems like it replaces part of 929 and then has a quote new element.
It does take a part of that existing service over, but because it is an all-day route and it goes all the way down to Stone Road, that's why we're calling it a new route, because it is significantly longer than the existing route that services the same area. So that's why it's called a new route.
Great. Again, from the same commenter, now that you've eliminated the 927 route, please explain how riders can easily get from the Dulles Technology area to Village Center at Dulles and Woodland Park Crossing. There are several wheelchair senior passengers that depend on the 927 route.
Adrian, do you want to take that one, or we can always get back with the individual and maybe do a little bit one-on-one conversation? So
yes, sure.
Let's because that is a particular question. Let's we're gonna, if you can give us your information, email us, and we can try to work with you and get a better understanding of the actual issues and see what we can do to make adjustments.
Great, thank you. Our next question, also from the same individual, if you include school children as part of the passenger counts, some routes without schools or as many schools will never have as large of a passenger load. Seems unfair, especially when they ride at no charge versus paying riders. Is this factored in?
When we look at our routes, yes, ridership is factored in. And what we do is we take a look at our route and we take a standard deviation, which is basically a mathematical formula for, Randy's the mathematician here, so basically we look above and below the average. And just because a route maybe is not performing as well as a route that has many, many students on it, like the RIBS 2 and the 551 that have a lot of students on it, that we don't penalize a route for that, because we also take a look at what areas those routes are actually serving. And so it's not just pure raw ridership, but it's where that route serves, how it connects to the rest of the system. Because if it was just the raw route and the raw ridership, we would have a lot less routes in the system. A lot of our routes don't have a lot of riderships on it, but the goal of the county is access and mobility and not just ridership. So it's one of the factors, it's not the only factor. Employment, access to employment are all key factors that we look at. Portions of the community, making sure that we have a certain percentage of the population covered. They're all elements that we try to look at as when we develop routes and make route adjustments. Hopefully.
Thank you, Michael. I want to, there's a follow-up to a previous question that was asked, and I wanted to share this with you. The question about reliability was in response to the question in the presentation about whether a shorter walk or more frequent service was preferred. So that was just a clarification. So in that slide we shared, I think they were just saying that we should also consider the reliability piece to that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it is a preference question. Obviously, if your bus isn't reliable, you know, that slide can be misleading. But remember, this is a preference question on what types of services do you want. And it's not a test on on-time performance. Obviously, if a route is having significant on-time performance issues, we have a lot of work to do. And that's a lot of what we've been trying to do in the last 2 years is find those routes that are having on-time performance issues and seeing how we can fix them. So yes, and it's one of the other factors that we look at when we look at a route. We just don't, once again, it's not the only ridership isn't the only thing we look at. We look at on-time performance also. But thank you for that.
Great, thank you. Just trying to roll through these, making sure we've got everything. Another comment, you have taken away 927 and now giving limited service on 937. This loss of service is a double whammy. Is that a question you'd like to follow up on with the individual, or are you able to respond to it?
Could you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
You have taken away 927 and now giving limited service on 937. This loss of service is a double whammy.
Right now, I don't have the map in front of me, but actually we do have a map. Let me go right here. Okay. What we tried to do on these routes right through here, where 927 and 937 actually operate, is we tried to make these routes like on 893 operates all day, 901 operates all day, 950 operates all day. 951, unfortunately, only operates during the rush hours. But we've identified, hopefully in the near future, additional resources that could operate all day. And that would allow people to get to the Herndon Metro Rail Station, be able to transfer to all the other routes. We also have 924 that actually operates all day from all the way up north of Highway 7 through Herndon, all the way down to Oak Hill. So we went through the route structure and the ridership demand, and we looked at every single rider and tried to make sure that they had service, hopefully throughout the entire day. But we would like to get with you and see, talk with you a little bit more and see how we can maybe make adjustments as we move forward.
Thanks, Michael. All right, just trying to make sure we get to all the questions. One comment, I think it was in relation to the relay, the driverless buses, driverless vehicle in Maryfield and Mosaic area, was that my son had an issue with the driverless vehicle in Maryfield when he was riding his bike to work. Just a simple comment. I know that's not something you, just, I don't know if you want to respond to that at all or let them know where to follow up, or we can follow up with them later.
We'd like to send that information over to operations and see what they can, what we can find out more about that. So if they could email us, or and then we can get that over to operations so that they can respond. I'm not sure I fully understand the what that comment is about.
I think it was just a comment. We can certainly follow up on that later.
Yeah.
So let's see here. I'm just trying to filter through. 952 doesn't work to replace the 981, 983. Take a closer look. Your explanation of 952 is insufficient. RIBS 2 service doesn't cover the section of road from Herndon Monroe to Sunset Hills by Target. This is unacceptable that neither 981, 983 nor RIBS 2 are available. And I think this individual is somebody you're already wanting to follow up with. So if you don't have a current response, we can, they already have several other questions that I'm sure we can address this as well, if that's easier.
Yeah, we're going to have to do that.
Great, no problem. I will move on to the next question. So this is a follow-up from the other individual. He says, sorry for the typo. I meant to say commuting hours. I remember the earlier question said community hours. So I misunderstood what they were asking, but they meant to say commuting hours. We are aware of the experiment in Mosaic, looking forward to how it turns out and when it can be turned on for other areas. So that's somebody who originally had asked about that experiment earlier.
Yes.
Our next comment is, what is being done to ensure that all passengers wear masks? Can drivers refuse service to those who do not? Driver safety is extremely important and should be protected to the utmost in addition to other passengers.
I believe this is a good question. This is an operations question, but my understanding is that all passengers and drivers are required to wear masks. I believe there are masks available that the driver can hand out. We also have shields up between the driver and the passenger. The passenger can still get to the fare box. The shield is there to protect the driver and the passenger. So that is what we're doing right now. We're not kicking people off the buses because people need to get to where they need to get to, but we are strongly recommending, face masks. And I believe we are also handing out masks to individuals who, whether they forgot one or don't have one at the time.
Great. We're actually still doing well on time. We were advertised until 9 p.m. So we have a few more questions to get through, and then we'll have an opportunity to say goodnight to everybody afterwards. Our next comment, and if there's no need to answer this one, it says, thank you for answering my previous question. No need to answer, but they're offering an additional comment. A rolling road line would serve to connect communities to multiple pre-existing routes to provide greater transit diversity overall for the area, especially with the WMATA losses. So no need to respond to that. I know, Michael, you and I have had that discussion.
That's actually the comments that we're actually looking for. And all the comments are important, but those comments that tell us where the gaps are, those are always important. For everyone who's mentioned a gap, whether it's due to one of our smaller plans, like the RESTON-HERNDON, we've had several questions about that, or Rolling Road, which is just mentioned here because of WMATA. These are all what we're looking for, so we're going to note those down, start looking at them, start understanding them, and understanding how we can mitigate and improve the service.
Great. We have a follow-up from the individual who was asking about the presentation that we're doing tonight and where it will be located. Again, this presentation is not currently on the website. It will be posted tomorrow on that website, on the fairfaxconnector.com website, or it's the website that you see here with the fairfaxcounty.gov/connector/TSP. You were asking about a direct link to that, like why couldn't we just link it? It's because it's not up there yet. We typically post that in these presentations after the first public meeting, so that way you'll be able to follow up tomorrow. I would just check tomorrow afternoon and we should have it in place for you. And if you have any questions or can't find it, certainly you can contact us at the Fairfax Connector at fairfaxcounty.gov email address, and we'll be happy to point you in the right direction. All right, so we have a few more questions. Let me just try to scroll through here. And by the way, I apologize. I understand that you're not asking about the pamphlet, but you're asking about this particular slideshow. And the presentation itself, plus the recording, will also be posted. A comment, the virtual meeting has been very informative. Thank you for hosting. There's a question here about the driverless vehicle had issues with identifying bicycles. That was the comment earlier, particularly bicycles that are passing them. And I think, Michael, you said you would check with operations and we could follow up with this individual directly. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Great, I'm just trying to keep track. One questioner asks, can we add buses, yes or no? So I assume they're referring to just adding a totally different bus, and please clarify if we're not understanding your question. If they can add a totally new bus, I assume that they could do that in the open response box.
Yes, if there's the open response box, if you want to say that you want additional service on a particular route or a particular area of the community, go ahead and put that in there. One of the things that we try to do is if you say, I want more service on Route 310, in South County, and I want that to run 15-minute service. That tells us, and then we go back and we take a look at the schedule and say, can we do that? How many buses would it take to do that? So you don't have to give us the number of buses. You just got to give us what the level of service and the hours of service that you want. It's really beneficial if you do that for us. That way we can take a look at where the gaps are, where the demand is, and try to find out then find the resources to add those services in. So that's really what we're looking for. Tell us where you want more service, so that way we can identify it and get it in that priority list, because that's what we're going to bring to the board. And if the board approves that, that's part of the climb to achieve the type of system that we need to achieve to meet the need.
Great. And to follow up, they added something else. Route 901, is there any way that it could add more service?
Yes, there's always opportunity. If you're looking at it, adding more service in the future over the next 10 years, that's something we can look at and doing. If you're looking at it for the short term, that's going to be a little bit more difficult because each one of these service plans were, as I mentioned earlier, budget neutral, plus or minus 2%. So there's only so much resources in the short term to try to play around with. But with the comment that you just mentioned, the 901, I'd like to see more service on that. That allows us to make a greater justification for adding more service on particular routes that have demand. Once again, let me just add in one more thing. All those comments that are like that, I need more service here, you're missing this location, those are the kinds of things that we need. We may not be able to achieve them right away, but we keep all your comments and we read them over and we try to achieve them in the future. If we don't get them now, we're going to get them later. So hopefully we can meet the need as we move forward.
Great, Michael. So, as we go through the questions, I try to bounce around so everybody has a chance to ask a question. The next few questions are from an individual that you are already going to follow up with, but I want to go ahead and read those questions to you, and you can either answer them or you can say that you will follow up with the individual directly, follow up with them directly. So if you'd like to defer the question to that follow-up, please feel free to do so. The question is, please take another look at 981, 983, not serving Herndon Monroe. Many that work at Dulles Airport take 950 to Herndon Monroe to connect with 981, 983. Michael, is that when
I know exactly what they're talking about? 950 coming into Herndon. We do have the 952 that actually goes to the airport, crosses the 950. 950 has 15-minute frequencies. I believe the 952 has 20-minute frequencies. So we are trying to look at improving infrastructure where those two routes crisscross, because we're aware that there's been, there's a desire to get to the airport without having to use the Metro Rail, because for some people that can be a financial, impact to them. So we are looking at that, and we're looking at how we can make those connections a little bit better. But yes, we will continue to look at that, and we will touch base with you.
Same participant. During the week when 937 ends at 4:23 p.m., anyone using the Herndon Road Library until the 9 p.m. closing will be stranded.
Once again, we will touch base with you on a one-on-one basis, and hopefully we can get a better understanding of the different gaps that are there. I know that 937 would only right now is proposed to operate during midday and evening service. There are some other routes in the area that operate either all day or during rush hour. So we're going to take another look at that and see how we can make those connections a little bit better. But once again, we will get back with you, once we get your contact information, so that we can possibly have a one-on-one or provide you with additional information.
Same participant, can you determine if a rider transfers between buses and how many they are using to get around?
We do onboard surveys, we're able to do that, but unfortunately we can't, the system doesn't track an individual through the system. It only shows a person getting off and on. Now, when they tap their card, we can, when they transfer, we can see that transfer, but we can't see that the person got on over at, we can't link the data points between the person getting on over at Herndon and they're getting off the bus, over in Reston Town Center, or that they got on the Metro Rail and they drove all the way down there. We can see the transfer in most cases, but we can't link that transfer to the boarding and the person getting off. They're separate data points, unfortunately. That's why we do onboard surveys, so we can ask those questions of individuals. Where are you getting on? Where are you getting off? And then we can identify where the transfer is happening. How many times do you transfer? So we do have that information, and we do ask those questions in the online surveys. What routes do you take? And what days of the week do you take them? So we get all that information. And then we try to cross-tab that information. But unfortunately, there's just no system right now in place that in almost every transit system to track an individual through the entire network. Now, there's something called streetlight data that tracks individuals across. It's usually their phone. Typically used for roadway and cars, but we can add, VDOT has that data, and there's a possibility that we maybe need to talk to them about getting access to some streetlight data that allows us to track a phone, basically tracks the Wi-Fi, your Bluetooth of your phone across the transportation network. So there are data sets out there, and we may need to look into doing and getting that information in the future so that we can make sure we're not causing people to transfer multiple times to get from point A to point B.
Michael, do you want to take a guess at how many questions you've answered this evening?
More than 5.
we've made it through or will address, either have addressed or will address 53 questions from our participants this evening.
That's good. That's good.
It's excellent. It's excellent. We love to engage. So, seeing and hearing no further questions, and I know you've got some follow-up to do, and we'll make sure that Michael and his team get the contact information you have provided to us. If you did not provide us your contact information for some reason when you registered, please make sure you email us at the Fairfax Connector at fairfaxcounty.gov email address, and just indicate your name and obviously, you know, that you had some questions that were unanswered and that you'd like responses. So if you would please just follow up and make sure that if we don't have your contact information, we'd definitely like to, or you can call us at the 703-339-7200 if for some reason you don't have email. So please make sure. So let me just do a quick closeout here. I don't, unfortunately, I knew that some of our VIP guests, our supervisors, had a long day, so I knew some of them weren't going to stay with us this evening. So there's no closing out there. But I will say, Michael, did you have any last comments for everybody before I review the end of meeting information that we need to share with everyone?
Yeah, I would like to say that first of all, I appreciate everybody taking their time out today, sharing this hour and a half, 2 hours with us, and providing us with all your feedback. It's important to us to hear from you. This is how we try to identify gaps in services. One of the things that I got a question from early on when I first got to Fairfax County, somebody said, well, what if you change the buses and they don't work? Well, that's why buses, rubber wheels, we can make changes. So nothing is set in stone forever. This isn't a heavy rail system. Once you build it, it's there. So it's almost like a living document, so to say. So while we may not have been able to answer your question here today, and we're going to take all your questions and take a look at them and see what we can do, that's what we're here for today, to hear you and then see what we can do to make those adjustments. We may not be able to make every single adjustment right away, but we're going to work towards making those adjustments and meeting the need of the community. This system is your system. It's not our system. It's everybody's system. So I just want to leave those words with you that we are trying to work through every single change that you talked about or issue that you talked about so that we can make a system that works the best that we can make it within the resources that we have. I wish we had a bottomless pit of resources, but unfortunately, we don't. So there are some tough decisions that have to be made, and we're trying to mitigate every single one of these as possible. So help us, help you, so to say. I hate to put it that way, but yes. And hopefully we can work with you and make the adjustments that you need so you can get around the community and maintain.
Thank you, Michael. So everyone, we have now come to the end of the meeting. Just a few reminders. A recording of this meeting will be available on the TSP webpage at fairfaxconnector.com in the next day or so. Any questions that we did not get to tonight will be responded to directly to the participant or posted on the study webpage. If you did not get a chance to provide feedback or would prefer to submit feedback online, please visit the TSP webpage and fill out a survey. And again, that website address is fairfaxcounty.gov/connector/TSP, or you can go to fairfaxconnector.com and you can click on the big orange flyer at the very top, and that will take you right to the TSP page. If you did not get, I'm sorry to make sure I didn't read this. If you did not get a chance to provide feedback or prefer to submit feedback online, again, we talked about that. You can email your comments to Fairfax Connector at fairfaxcounty.gov. You can also call us at 703-339-7200. Our TTY number is 703-339-1608, or mail your comments to the Fairfax County Department of Transportation to the mailing address on the screen. Again, just address to our main department website, our main department address, but just add public comment, TSP, and attention transit planning. Comments again will be accepted on the survey through email, through by phone, through February 19th, 2021. So we have a good bit of time before those comments are due, but don't wait. And finally, we'd like to thank you so much for your participation and all the wonderful questions we received tonight. So thank you to everyone. Good night, be safe, and be well. Have a good evening.